The hero within Awaken's Elias Vance was a number, a precision, a template of regularity. His life was spent in a 27th floor accounting office of a downtown Seattle, Washington skyscraper. Every day, he gazed at the sparkling waters of Elliott Bay, but he rarely truly felt it. Elias was a 32-year-old man with neatly cut brown hair, a perpetually tight tie, and a secret yearning. He wanted to be a courageous person, someone who could make a difference, not just a spreadsheet editor. He called himself a professional observer. When a woman dropped her wallet at the corner coffee shop, he was the first to notice, but someone else quickly picked it up. When a loud argument erupted on the subway, he was the first to try and avoid eye contact. Elias wasn't a bad person. He was just afraid to intervene. We all have a hero inside. Elias, his mother, a retired nurse who had saved many lives, used to say, "But it only wakes up when you force it to." Elias always thought it was a cliche, until the day everything descended into chaos. It was a Friday afternoon, around 4:45 p.m., when the sunlight broke through the characteristic gray clouds of Seattle. Elias was checking one last column of data when the fire alarm blared. It wasn't the familiar test chime, but an urgent, sharp, and intermittent warning siren. First came confusion, then a wave of pandemonium. The 27th floor was 4 office workers, not athletes. People rushed toward the fire escape, creating a chaotic bottleneck. Shouts, the clatter of shoes, and a faint smell of smoke began to spread. Elias clutched his laptop bag, adrenaline pumping into his veins, urging him to flee. He followed the crowd, head down. He was part of the chaos, safe in the anonymous mass. When he reached the third bend, he heard a sound that didn't belong to the usual panic. It was a hacking, choking cough coming from somewhere down the main hallway. A young woman in distress ran backward, grabbing his arm. The 26th floor. It's thick smoke. A small fire in the storage room. Someone is trapped. I heard him coughing. The fire exit is jammed. Elias's heart pounded like a drum. His body wanted to continue running down, toward safety, toward his quiet apartment. He saw a vision of his mother standing before him, with a gentle yet determined smile. 26th floor, storage room. His voice was a whisper, almost a curse. By now, the elevators were locked, and the fire escape was filled with smoke rising from the floor below. Most people had already descended. The hallway was now quiet and black with smoke. Elias, who had spent his entire life working with figures, suddenly felt anger. Anger at his own cowardice. Anger at the indifference that had clung to him for so many years. He turned his back on the safe exit and stepped up toward the smoke. The smell of burnt material and soot began to sting his eyes. He took the handkerchief from his pocket, soaked it with a little water from a leftover bottle, and covered his nose. He knew it wasn't perfect, but it was all he had. The 26th floor was plunged into dense darkness. Not a single light worked. Elias, who always memorized every minor detail of his environment to professional habit, began to use his mind. Mine hallway, 3 steps left. The storage room is next to the marketing director's office, Mr. Thompson. He crept through the smoke layer, trying to keep his breaths as shallow as possible. The smoke seemed to have weight, pressing down on his chest. He tripped over something and nearly fell, but managed to brace himself against the wall. "Mr. Thompson," he yelled, his voice strained from inhaling smoke. The dry cough echoed, faint but distinct. "Help, ... The door? It's locked, ... Mr. Thompson's office wasn't the storage room, but perhaps he had run in there to seek refuge. Elias rushed to the office door. The wooden door was heavy and bolted. In a moment of horror, he saw himself failing again. He wasn't a firefighter. He didn't have a sledgehammer. He was just Elias Vance, un accountant. But then, an idea flashed. A piece of information from the building safety checks he had always ignored. He remembered the emergency spare key. Somewhere within 1 meter of this door, there must be a small key box, he muttered. He shone his phone flashlight battery nearly dead onto the nearby wall. Nothing. He ran his hand along the doorframe, feeling every detail of the rough paint. His finger touched a small, cold indentation. They pressed it, and a small metal box sprang open, revealing a brass key inside. He plunged the key into the lock, his hand trembling from the pressure and the smoke. Click! The sound of the bolt unlocking was like a triumphant trumpet. He opened the door, and thick black smoke billowed out. Mr. Thompson, an elderly man, was huddled under the desk, struggling to breathe. "Take my hand, sir," Elias yelled. Mr. Thompson was too weak. Instead of pulling, Elias used the hands familiar with his keyboard to support the man's body, draping his arm over his shoulder. "We're going the other way. The north stairwell," Elias instructed, leading Mr. Thompson in the opposite direction from the fire, toward a less-used service staircase. They took heavy steps, Elias's body taut from the weight and the smoke. No longer was it panic. Now he was focused only on Mr. Thompson's breathing and his own steps. The precision he used to balance ledges was now applied to balancing a life. When they reached the ground floor lobby, the rush of fresh air into his lungs was the most wonderful thing Elias had ever experienced. Fire trucks had arrived, their red lights flashing and sirens wailing throughout the street. Mr. Thompson was immediately attended to by medics. Before he was taken away, he squeezed Elias's hand tightly. "You're a hero. You saved me, son." That evening, Elias didn't go home to check emails or spreadsheets. He sat on a stone bench in Pioneer Square Park, looking up at the skyscraper where he worked. The fire was under control. He didn't feel like a Hollywood hero. His clothes were dirty, and his hands were still trembling slightly. But one thing had changed. The fear was gone, replaced by a profound sense of peace, a feeling of self. He hadn't waited for someone else to act. He hadn't procrastinated. He hadn't sought to avoid. A hero isn't someone who lacks fear, but someone who chooses to act despite it. Elias Vance, the accountant from Seattle, had found the final precision he needed in his life. His value was not in the numbers he arranged, but in the courage he chose to display it. He stood up, no longer looking at the ground. He looked straight into the city's night sky, where the stars began to twinkle, knowing that from now on, every step he took would carry a different meaning. The hero within him had awakened, and he would never let it sleep again.